What's going on, guys? So we're actually back here in the backyard. I can finally talk my normal voice again because I don't have to worry about spooking tarpon. I'm gonna show you guys and tell you guys the techniques that I was trying to do there to have better success at hooking those baby tarpon while this water is chilly. So the first bait I was throwing in the very first couple spots of the video was this right here. This is the 4-inch X-Swim. This is a fluke style bait that has joints on the back half of the bait. So when you pull this thing through the water straight, you get your line tight and you just give it a quick little pull, these joints wiggle very tightly and very quickly, and it gives it a super nice S-move action, and it actually even vibrates too. If you have a light enough rod, you move that thing and you can actually feel that tail vibrating when it wiggles because it wiggles so tightly. But this thing is absolutely killer. I have found with shallow water tarpon in 3 foot of water or less, this bait works extremely effectively. It's also a bait though that you normally have to move a little faster, so I like to use it more in the springtime and the summertime when the water's warmer. But I tried using it now for the winter because I had never used it in the wintertime. But they didn't want any piece of it. Those little creek tarpon did not want any piece of this in the wintertime. This is the next bait I tied on. This is actually the 2-inch, well, it might be a little bit longer than 2 inches, but I call it the 2-inch Slim Shad right here. This little paddle tail is such a ridiculously good bait. This thing is about, as I know a lot of guys when they use like small paddle tails like this on a jig head, they would use like a DOA cow. This is like a DOA cow and it will never break. You can catch 30 fish on this one bait and it will not break. It is absolutely ridiculous. This thing on the end of that, this tail right here, that plastic is extremely flexible. So this tail, even when you're cranking this thing super slow, which I love to do sometimes in the wintertime for snook and tarpon, this tail will move. When you're literally reeling it, the slowest that your spinning reel can reel it, this tail will slowly be kicking back and forth, and it's just unreal. Such a great little paddle tail. But I love using this in the wintertime. I've actually had great success using small paddle tails like this in the wintertime, but this particular day, the tarpon did not want it, whether that was because of the barometric pressure, or because of the specific time of year, or just because of the specific temperature of the water. I only had one actually strike this thing, and he never came back for it. But all the rest of the tarpon ate this bait right here. So this right here is the bait that all the fish absolutely slammed today. This is the Monster 3X 3 3/4 inch shrimp. This is by far my favorite soft plastic to use. I mean, I can find pretty much in every situation you find inshore and offshore on the reefs, this thing is effective. I mean, it's just a ridiculously versatile bait. But today, the way I was using it is I was rigging it on an 1/8 ounce weedless hook. This is actually Monster 3X brand as well. This is the, I believe it's made by a company called TA Jigs. This is the weedless hook that I love to use, keeping this shrimp on the surface when I'm fishing for baby tarpon. And this little 1/8 ounce jig head just does perfect with this thing. And what I was doing was just reeling this thing super slow, about maybe 1.5 to 2 foot below the surface, and every once in a while just giving it a little pop, making this tail kick down and moving that water, because as you can see, that tail on this bait is super wide. So when you kick this thing with your rod tip up, it moves that tail downward, and I think that does really good, especially with those baby tarpon and them being able to sense and see that little tail moving and pushing that water, and they just go nuts for it. And on top of that, it's just the winter time and the water is really cold, these tarpon aren't going to want to move very fast to catch a bait, which is where this shrimp presentation comes in super handy with those little fish. Just fairly slowly cranking this thing over their heads just imitates a little shrimp, because when you think about it, a shrimp doesn't kick its tail to swim. That's only when it's afraid, and when and I only do that, kick that tail, to trigger that feeding response of the tarpon. But mainly what you're doing with this thing is just slowly hovering it, just reeling it, so that thing just hovers right over their head. Because when you see a shrimp moving in the water, all it does is just swim. It just kicks its little legs right under its tail and moves, moving perfectly motionless in the water, just hovering over those fish. And that's how they see a shrimp. So when they see that, that instantly indicates that they're looking at a shrimp. What I was also using was a medium light Ducket Salt series right here. That's the rod I was using. This rod I've been using a lot for baby tarpon and just a lot of my inshore applications. This medium light has been perfect for just about everything, because that tip is extremely light, and when you get power put into this rod, right about here at like halfway to the first guide, it stops, and it's just pure power. And this thing's actually been extremely great. The grip's super comfortable. This rod's got a lot of power for how light it is, and it casts amazing. I mean, just everything about it. It's been great. Been great so far. And I was using, you know, the good old faithful, what we love right here, the Florida Fishing Products Osprey CE right here. This is actually the CE 2000, the carbon edition. This reel, insanely light, holds tons of line. I got about 250 yards right here of 10-pound braid on here. And this thing's been amazing. I mean, this reel is tiny. I think it's got like 22 pounds of drag, and it's an unbelievable reel. It's great. Drag super loud, you know, so you get that awesome sound when this tarpon freaking scream. And it's just, I mean, this is the perfect setup right here. Little 2500 size reel, and this hook right here was perfect. And the last thing I want to mention is what I was doing when I would come up to one of those big openings in the creek. When I would come up to those big openings, those tarpon would be rolling right in the middle of the openings. So what I would do is I would walk up to that opening. I didn't actually get this on film. I did this, had the GoPro off so that I didn't have too much of the beeping on and off of the camera as I was filming. I would sit down on the bank for about 5-10 minutes, because what would happen is I would walk up, they would hear the footsteps of me coming up, and I would watch them roll further and further down the creek as they would move away from me. So what I would do is I would sit down on the creek bank, and I would wait for those tarpon to slow, and I would watch them as if you'd stay completely quiet, not make any noise at all, and you would see them go further down the creek and wait about 5-10 minutes, and you would see them roll closer and closer and closer and closer, and they would get closer to you. And eventually, after about 5-10 minutes of you being quiet and sitting there not bothering them, they would roll right next to you. They would roll 5 feet from me, in which case I would take my shot and they would crush the bait instantly, because they were completely non-threatened and they felt like nothing at all wrong was going on there. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. The winter fishing has been incredible lately, so we're gonna keep pumping out videos as much as we can, because the fishing's been incredible. So we're gonna keep staying out there and keep going. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Stay tuned, guys. Peace out.